There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Greetings everyone, and welcome to the Dunwich Steps. Today we're diving into my top 3 horror movie remakes. I know a lot of people don't really like horror remakes or remakes in general, but I feel like there are some really good ones out there that deserve lots of attention. In most cases, I'm not a huge supporter of remakes myself, but a lot of the time I do find it interesting when people recreate older films with newer technology. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think one of the most agreed upon issues when it comes to remakes is when the main idea or message of the original film is forgotten or looked over and is instead replaced with eye candy such as CGI, which in most cases just isn't as good as practical effects. I also realized after putting this list together that it is definitely not the most original list. I'm pretty sure everyone has these 3 films in their favorites, but I'm gonna go ahead with it anyways. Let's get on to my top 3 favorite horror remakes. Starting off at number 3, we have David Cronenberg's The Fly. This film is amazing for multiple reasons. Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, insane special effects, and a tragic story. The Fly, for anyone unfamiliar with the story, is about a scientist creating a machine that can teleport matter to another machine. Basically, your basic teleportation machine. The 80s Cronenberg version is a remake of the original 1958 version of The Fly, starring Vincent Price, which is one of my favorite 50s horror films. They both do an excellent job telling different aspects of the same story. They both give warnings about dismissing caution when it comes to delving deeper into the realm of science, but they focus on different repercussions. I would say the remake focuses more on the physical aspect, while the original focuses more on the emotional. And yet this isn't entirely true in itself, because the remake is, in my opinion, more emotional. However, I say it focuses more on the physical aspect because anybody who knows about this movie is most likely aware of the gnarly special effects done for the long transformation of Goldblum into the Brundlefly. This movie isn't really scary, as it's more focused on grossing you out and portraying the raw emotion of seeing a loved one's physical condition deteriorate, which is actually quite deep. And while it's obviously exaggerated for the plot of the movie, I feel like this fear of slowly losing someone you care about is present in many of us. In the end, it's a well-written movie with excellent effects, wonderful acting, and a good understanding and respect of the original story. On to movie number 2. Second on my list, we have The Thing from John Carpenter. I know a few people may be shocked that this isn't number 1 on my list, but no, I really do love this film, which is why it's on this list. John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake of the original movie, The Thing from Another World, which is in itself an adaptation of the story Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. I recently watched The Thing from Another World for the first time, and I gotta say I really enjoyed it. The best part of the movie was the dialogue of everyone in the movie. The cast seemed to have the best chemistry I've ever seen in a film from the 50s. I was genuinely impressed with how well written and delivered their lines were.
I don't want a picture. You get back with the rest. Don't be silly. That'll cost you a drink, Scotty. I'll have a beer.
The story of John Carpenter's The Thing follows a science crew stationed in the Arctic coming across some burned remains at a Norwegian base that's just a little a ways away from their own base. They bring the strange corpse back to their base to study it, not realizing at first that the creature they found is able to copy the image of life forms and disguise itself as most biological material. This makes everyone suspicious of each other, and the race to expose the thing begins. Now, there are multiple reasons the remake of this class is on this list and became a classic itself, most notably its crazy special effects. But also I want to acknowledge that instead of only trying to change and modernize the story, John Carpenter's Thing paid homage to and stuck pretty close to the concept of the original by adding changes where necessary to make it better for the modern 80s audiences. The creature design is to this day one of the best in cinema, and I use the term design lightly because the thing itself doesn't really seem to have a true form. It just splices together whatever victims it manages to assimilate, so you never really see a true form, making it all the more impressive that I can remember every creature form the thing took. This movie's strongest aspects are the effects and feeling of isolation and atmosphere. It's a cold movie and it makes you feel cold, and even when the thing isn't on screen, you still get the excellent interactions between the crew occupying the base. All in all, this is an amazing horror film, certainly one of the best from the 80s, and if you haven't already, you need to check it out. Before my number 1 on this list, I'm gonna do an honorable mention, which is the Wolfman remake from 2010. I know I might get some hate for this one since Universal's The Wolfman is a classic, but I gotta admit the remake hits every subject I want in a werewolf movie. It modernizes the original Wolfman look just enough so it's more intimidating, but doesn't lose the charm of the original design. The only reason it wasn't officially on this list is because it does use some CGI that I wasn't a huge fan of, but the story, acting, and especially atmosphere and aesthetic are so good I had to include it somewhere on the list. And finally, on to my number 1 horror remake, which is The Blob from 1988. This movie is a remake of the 1968 film The Blob, which follows a strange ooze leaking out of a meteor that recently crashed to Earth. The problem is this ooze is hungry and it eats, or more accurately, absorbs most organic materials, and as it eats, it grows. It's up to some teens in a small town to put an end to the Blob's terror. The original The Blob was one of the first horror films I ever watched, and it scared the hell out of me. I was probably 6 or 7, and the music in the film freaked me out so much that I had to plug my ears. I don't know why, it was just a thing I did. Also, the movie theater scene made me afraid of vents and things like that. I love the remake so much because it feels like a 50s B-movie, but filmed in the 80s. It seems like they took the story of The Blob and just shifted things around enough to make it appropriate for the 80s. The crazy good organic effects, which is my favorite part of the film, and the tone of the movie make it so excellent. It's just a fun, silly concept, and the director and cast clearly knew this. There are more serious moments, but it's pretty clear they were really just trying to have fun, and that comes across perfectly. In my opinion, it's not only the best remake of all time, but also one of the best 80s horror films of all time. You definitely need to watch this one as soon as possible. That'll do it for this video, everyone. Thanks so much for visiting the Dunwich Depths. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.